Let's go ahead and get started. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. This is AP1. Welcome to class. And this is our first day of class. And this is our virtual class. And I'm coming to you from my office here on campus. So this is a new experience to be broadcast, doing this from not from home for a change. So it's a welcome to AP1. I assume that most of you are in here because you want to be going to nursing or surg tech or maybe pre-pharmacy, pre-vet, pre-physical therapy, PTA, radiology, any number of these things. So this is one of the classes that you're going to need to take for this. And we have a pretty good track record in this class of getting people into healthcare programs. If you do well in this class, you have a very good success rate. You know, an A or a B in here will usually get you into where you want to be. So as long as you earn the A or B. So let's see a couple of things. Let's talk a little bit about the class. You know, it's all virtual. Everything is online. Everything is found in the eLearn section. In the content, you've got all the PowerPoints there. I lecture off the PowerPoints. I'm not going to read the PowerPoints. I will use those as my talking points. I sent you the PDF version of the PowerPoint so you can take notes on there as we go through. So you can have, because the things that are important on the PowerPoint slide, I'm not going to say we'll learn everything. Well, no, because there's some things are important and some things are not so important. So I'll always try to emphasize what's the important things for you. But your PowerPoints are there, your PDFs are there. There are some videos in there for you to watch. I'm going to try and show them in lecture if I get them to work. And let's see, what else? Okay, so your content's there. Your textbook is an ebook. I sent out a link for that. The book is called Anatomy and Physiology. It's from OpenStax, and the authors of the textbook came from Rice University. So it's a reputable book. I've been using it for a number of years now. And it tracks pretty well with any other A&P textbook out there. So you don't have to get it. It's a free book. It's online. You can print out the various chapters that you want if you'd like to. I do recommend, if you have the chance, to go pick up the used textbook from Amazon or eBay or McKay's in Knoxville, for example. But don't spend more than $10. Even a book that's 15 years old is still very good. You know, human anatomy hasn't changed in a long, long time. So we may have a few name differences, but that's all. So even an old book will work very nicely for you if you want to have a hard copy to carry around. And sometimes it's good to have that, you know, as a good reference. So that's the only book requirement. There is no requirement for lab for a book. The content in your lab is, and I'm assuming most of you are going to probably in the Monday virtual lab, but you know, I could be wrong. The lab content is all found in eLearn there. And if you're in the Monday lab, we'll start up again. We'll start up with that lab on this coming Monday. So now, since this is a virtual class, everything is done, you know, through the DVC format for lecture. I'm recording the lectures and I will post them into YouTube each day, and I'll send you a link for it. So whatever we have today will show up in YouTube later on. It takes about an hour to get it processed, and then you'll have the link for it. You can go back and watch it again and again if you found it that exciting that you wanted to watch it. Frankly, I don't know why you want to, but no, the point is that we had this recorded. This is going to be especially beneficial when you've got something going on, because life is going to get in the way of you being able to be in class every time. We know that. You know, things are going to break. People are going to get sick. Power is going to go out. But I will have the lecture recorded for you and placed in YouTube so you can get caught up. So, because there's only 2 AP1 classes this spring. One's on the ground, one is virtual. You're going to track at the same pace, but you know, you'll always have the recording to fall back on if you miss a class. So the exams are all online. We use it's a lockdown browser, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, to proctor you when you take the exam. There are 5 lecture exams and a final exam, and they're all proctored that way. Usually the way I'll do it is, if you notice I didn't have a date for when the lecture exams are, because I don't know when we're going to get there. I go by the pace of the class. You know, at whatever pace, you know, when we finish a unit, which is usually 2 chapters, when we finish a unit, then we'll schedule a test, probably a week later, a week after we finished it. Give you plenty of time to prepare for it. And the online exam I'll leave open for several days so that you can work it around your schedule. It'll be 50 questions. It will be timed. You'll have plenty of time to complete the exam. Usually I give you an hour and a half for 50 questions, which is usually adequate. If you have any kind of information from student support services about needing more time, or to take the exam or anything along those lines, let me know so I can make an accommodation for you if you need it. So anyway, so those are the exams, 5 exams. The final exam will be in the first week in May. Let's see, probably on Wednesday of exam week, because our class is meeting at 11:10, so probably on Wednesday of exam week. And it'll open up and it'll be timed also, and I'll give you a 24-hour window to go ahead and take it. So now the grades in the class are based on the 5 lecture exams, which represent 90% of your final grade. And then the final exam is worth 10% of the final grade. Everything is point-based. There's 600 possible points in the class, and you want to get 90% of those, or 540 total points to get an A. And it's just as straightforward as that. As long as you're scoring well on your lecture exams, then you're going to be in good shape. Keep track of your point totals, and just as you aim towards that 540 point to get that A. There is the opportunity for extra credit in here. There is 20 points of extra credit, or there are 20 points of extra credit available to you. There are 4 soft chalk exercises embedded in the e-learn content. And I'll probably have to go back and label those as the extra credit ones, because there's several other soft chalk exercises. The soft chalks are exercises, if you're not familiar with them, they're designed to work you through a topic and then quiz you on it. And some are just for reinforcing the knowledge base, but 4 of them are for credit. And each one that's worth for credit is worth 5 points. So you have 20 points total of extra credit, which is applied directly to your point total. And that may be an important set of points. They're not required. You don't have to do the soft chalks. You can depend totally on your lecture grade. It doesn't matter. I have set the due date for the soft chalks as the end of exam week. So you have, I think I have it set to the end of exam week. So you have until May the 6th to complete those, to get those points. If you realize that you may want them. But again, you don't have to. If you're scoring in the 90s on every exam, then you're not going to need to worry about those extra points. But you know, it's up to you. So okay. Let's see what else. I will be doing attendance reporting today and for the next 2 weeks to make sure, let everybody know, let them know that in administration that you're in class. And let's see, I'll report that right after class today and right after lab and on Monday. Let's see, anything else? Anybody have any questions? I've been talking now for a while. Questions on anything? I encourage you to ask questions in class. Unmute yourself or shoot me a chat item. To me, that's great. I love going down rabbit holes on discussions. So to me, that's a lot of fun. And I don't mind if we go off topic a little bit. Now, the course, the flow of the course, we are going to start out with Chapter 1, which is Introduction, where we end up talking about terminology and structures, a little bit about anatomy and physiology, why, you know, one of the differences, and then we'll talk about some just overview of some organ systems and talk about non-invasive techniques for examining the body, like X-ray. That's going to be Chapter 1, and we'll probably get through about half of that today. And then the second chapter is on chemistry. And you might ask, why are we looking at chemistry? And we're looking at chemistry because the state mandates it. No, that's true. But the reason we look at chemistry is because our bodies are, we are a human structure that depends on chemical reactions to survive. You know, everything about us is based on chemical reactions. Our nervous system depends on generating electrical signals through chemical reactions. We process food, we release gases, we release waste products, we release energy from the food we eat. Those are all chemical reactions, so we study chemistry. And I will tell you, it is probably the second least favorite chapter that we cover. That's how we get rid of it early on. I shouldn't say get rid of it, but we address it early on. You know, I try to make it as interesting as I can. The second unit is going to be on cells and metabolism. So getting a little bit better as far as the interest level goes in here, but it can be somewhat dry. We do talk about, we start talking about things that can go wrong, but we also talk about where we get our energy from. The third unit is bones and muscles. Now we're starting to move into organ systems, and this is good. Organ systems allow us to learn how our body works, but it also gives us a chance to understand when things go wrong. We start getting examples of pathology, things that might happen to our patients, things that might occur that we have to look for, you know, things that we can, you know, there's little intuitive insights that we're going to need later on in healthcare. Then we get from bones and muscles, we go into the nervous system for 4 chapters. The first unit, the nervous system, is the nerve structure. The second one is the brain and the spinal cord. The brain is probably my favorite chapter in this part of the in AP1. And then we start to, because we talk about how we process information, how we think, how we retain information, how we remember events and activities. And then we go into the autonomic nervous system, the mechanisms that control us without us thinking about it. And we talk about the peripheral nervous system, all the nerves that feed into the brain and spinal cord. So we so we finish up at the end of April on the nervous system, and that ties in with what we do in lab. It is fascinating topics. The last half of the course, it is much better than the first half. I'll tell you. I will make it as interesting as I can until we get into the good stuff, if you will. You know, I think you'll enjoy all of it. Some of it is more tedious than others. I've taught this for 18, going on 19 years, and I know what's tedious and what's not tedious. So anyway, how to do well in this class. You know, one of the ways I always tell everybody, and it seems to work really well, is to form a study group. And I know it sounds like, oh, everybody says that, but study groups, I've seen this happen every year. A study group will form an AP1, and 4 or 5 people will get together and start working together as they study, going over content and teaching it to each other. And then that study group stays together in the AP2. And then that study group stays together when they go into nursing or into surg tech or into radiology. They all go together and they graduate together because they started 2 years, 2 or 3 years previously working together in AP1. Because when you store information in your brain, when you write something down, that stores it as a memory. When you read something, you store it as a memory in a different part of your brain. When you tell it to somebody, tell this information to somebody else, you store it in another part of your brain. And so eventually, if you work in a study group and talk to each other and teach to each other and write it down and repeat it, you've got 4 or 5 different areas where information is being located. And the way our memory works is if we can draw this information out together from these different areas, we have a much better chance of retaining it. And doing well in this class is just about retention of information, putting it together, retaining it, and being able to process it and talk about it and know it, not just spit it back out. You know, I mean, I could give you a test and just say, spit back what I'm telling you. And I hope my tests aren't like that. But my test wants you to be able to process this information and give me an answer. You know, that's why I like talking about things in class. The question: do we get points taken off or we miss a day? No, you do not get points taken off. If you feel the need to send me an excuse or a note from the doctor, that's fine. I don't require it. I figure we're all adults here. If you're going to miss a day, you probably had a good reason for it. If you were sick, if your kid was sick, if your dog or cat was sick, you know, if it snows, you know, like it did to us yesterday, it snowed, but we still had class. I think we've lost our snow days for forever now, so I don't like that. So, no, you will not lose points. I will not. I've never taken points off for anybody's attendance. You know, if you have to miss, you have to miss. And there's all sorts of things they're gonna, right. Second question, are no quizzes, just exams? Yes, just exams, no quizzes. The exams, if you go into eLearn content, when I post it in eLearn, you'll find it under the quizzes section, but they really will be the exams. So no penalty for missing class. I'll just assume you got something to do or you had a problem. You know, if you let me know ahead of time, that's great. You know, but you're not gonna get dinged. Study guides, yes, there are study guides in eLearn. At the bottom of the table of contents in eLearn, at the very bottom of the list, there are study guides for each exam and for the final exam. And I will do a final exam review for you during, if we get everything done, I'll do a final exam review for you at the end of April or maybe even during exam week. I'll do that virtually. And there is also a recorded version that you can look at too. So study guides are not a cheat sheet. They are not an answer sheet. They give you general topics that you know what to expect. If there's something special that I went over, you'll probably see it in the study guide. I know I've had people in the past review only the study guide, not the PowerPoints. When you're preparing for an exam, you need to go through your lecture notes based off of the PowerPoints and go through the study guide itself, because it can't hurt. The more places you see it written down, the more likely you are to retain it. So, you know, I know it works because when I was an undergraduate, and here he goes with one of those when he was an undergraduate stories. But when I was an undergraduate, I used to rewrite my notes, and it worked very well. I would take my notes and rewrite them. And then after that, I would get together with another person in my class. We would go back and forth on the content, and that really did help. So, and you combine that with the study guides and going over using your PowerPoints and your notes on your PowerPoints. I think that'll be very helpful. It's as many ways as you can get your brain to remember the information is what you need to do. So whatever works for you is helpful. I will have anything I can do to help you. There are going to be a number of videos that are posted in eLearn about try to show in lecture also, and if they work, great, that go over certain topic areas. I've even found in lab, I know we're not in lab yet, but I even found a practice test for the bone exam that we'll do in lab. So, well, that's something else. You should have practice exams located in eLearn. Those are old exams from years ago that I have put in there for you to take. They're not for credit, but they will give you a real flavor of what to expect on the actual exam. You know, and to be honest, there's only so many ways you can ask the same kind of question. And so you can go in there and you can take those exams as often as you want. Just don't expect that to be what the real exam looks like. I've had people that I took the practice exam 10 times and I still got a 70 on my real test. How come? Well, because the practice exam isn't the real test. So, but you can take those as often as you want. And they're useful. I mean, some people find them very useful. It does give you a flavor of what to expect in the exam. Now, the lecture exams are going to be multiple choice, usually 50 questions. The final exam is multiple choice also. It's 100 questions. So there shouldn't be no surprises. Hopefully nothing. You know, I've gone through these exams before, and I change them around, but I try very hard to make sure that the questions and the answers are not ambiguous. These questions are not designed to show you how smart I am. They're designed for you to think. And I like to believe that the exam questions, the exam itself is a learning tool, because sometimes when you go through an exam, you'll answer a question and you'll answer another question related to that first question, and suddenly a light bulb will go off and you realize, hey, that's the point. That's the point I was trying to make. And believe it or not, it really does work. You know, whatever helps. Now, I will also tell you, and I'll tell you this before we start, when we get into exams. Once you make your selection on your test, don't change it. Because you usually mark down, the first answer is usually the correct answer. It's only if you start second guessing yourself when you get in trouble and change things. So I'll remind you that when we get into the exam. Other questions? Any questions? Or are you just tired of me talking? Want me to get into the content? So, okay, I would like to go right into content now and get into, this is going to be chapter 1. Let's see if this works. Let's see if I get this. And everybody should see my PowerPoint's coming up. Can everybody see the PowerPoint that says chapter 1, introduction to the human body? Can you see that?
Yes.
Oh, good. It worked. So this is first time I've done this with 3 screens, so I'm just sort of bear with me a little bit. Okay. So chapter 1, introduction to the human body. The reason that we are talking about the human body, this introduction part here, is because we have to learn, the first thing we have to learn is terminology. We have to learn how to speak about the body. Yeah, we're going to say an arm or a leg or a hand or a foot, but we can't use terms like up there or down there, or, you know, we can't say left and right anymore. Well, we can, but not very often, because perspective, it's all about perspective. When I draw a picture of a heart, for example, and I look at the heart, and I label the right side of the heart. Well, when you're looking at the picture of the heart, what I'm labeling as the right side of the heart is left to you from your perspective, because it's all about our perspective. So we have to have specific terminology so we don't make mistakes. How often have you ever heard about someone going in for surgery to have a kidney removed? Maybe the kidney is cancerous or something, and they take out the wrong kidney. And then they took out the healthy kidney, now they have to take out the other kidney, now the patient's on dialysis. Or people that have used a Sharpie to write on their abdomen, take out appendix, not gallbladder, or appendix is on the right side, because mistakes happen. We have to use the right terminology so that everybody operates on the same page. Everybody is using the same terms to describe the same areas of the body. This next scene here, one of my favorite horror movies is the original Frankenstein. And you'll notice that Dr. Frankenstein here is saying, when he's talking about the monster, he's saying it's alive. Because since he put it together from parts, he considers it an it. He's using the correct terminology instead of he or she. Bride of Frankenstein occurs in the next movie, but anyway, the point is terminology is important. So this is anatomy and physiology. Anatomy is structure. It is the structure of our body, the body parts, and how everything fits together. The structure is very, very important, because the structure will often dictate how that part works, and that leads into physiology. Structure and function are intertwined. Can't get away from it. We have a 4-chambered heart. The heart is a double pump. It has 2 receiving chambers and 2 pumping chambers. The right side of the heart receives blood from the body and pumps it out to the lungs. The left side of the heart receives blood from the lungs and pumps it out to the body. It's 2 separate pumping structures. They don't connect directly to each other. So the heart is designed as a 4-chambered pump. Half of it sends blood to the lungs, the other side sends it to the body. The structure of the heart dictates its function. And that's what physiology is all about, the function of our body parts. How do things work the way they do? The anatomy is what they look like. How are they shaped? Consider your arm. Consider your forearm. you have two bones in your forearm called the ulna and the radius. They enable you to turn the shape of their bones. These bones can rotate around the end of the humerus, the bone of the upper arm. The reason that they are designed to rotate around the end of the humerus is so that you can turn your wrist almost a full 360 degrees. When you turn a doorknob, you are turning that doorknob, you have your fingers on the doorknob, turning the doorknob, and the two bones in your arm, the ulna and the radius, are rotating around the end of the humerus so that you can turn your hand and open the door. You can pivot something. The structure of the bones of the arm enable the function of manipulating your environment. And so we see structure and function so completely intertwined here together. Now, the topics that we'll look at, we have gross anatomy. We're looking at what we call macroscopic, large-scale anatomy. We're looking at the whole body. We'll look at a leg or an arm or a torso. We'll look at the whole body in perspective. We can look at it regionally or individually, but we're looking at the large structures. We can look at the organs. We can look at models of the heart and lungs that are life size. In AP2, we'll hopefully get some actual hearts to play with to dissect. Later in AP1, we'll look at brains and eyeballs from sheep, which are similar, very similar in structure. About half, like the brain of a sheep is about half the size of a human brain. Sheep eyeballs about the same size. Look at it from the outside, and it will, and we'll open them up. That's still macroscopic anatomy. It's gross anatomy. The surface structures and the underlying structures, things that are visible. We can look at muscles underneath our skin. We know where the muscles are. We can see the bulges in our skin where the muscles are located. We can't see the muscles, but we know where they are. We can feel them contract and relax. We can feel bone underneath our skin. We don't have to open it up to see it. If you ever walk into something with your shin bone, you hit your tibia, your lower leg, the calf, calf muscle in the back. There's a very prominent bone in front of the calf called we call it the shin bone. It's probably called the tibia. There's a very sharp edge. If you rub your hand down along the front of your lower leg, you can feel that sharp edge. You don't have to open up the skin to see it so you can feel it. It's still going to be macroscopic anatomy. Now, if we want to go a little lower and more detailed, we go microscopic. We can look at the cells. Over here, we can use a microscope, and we can see on the microscope, we can see, we'll talk all about the microscope on lab on Monday, but we can use the microscope that will enable us to see things at the cellular level. Right next to that, the blue slide shows you T cells. Cells straight from the inside of your mouth that show the individual cells with the nucleus in each cell. Simple cells that line our mouth. Or we can look at something a little more specific, like a neuron. That's the one in purple there. We can look at cells. We can look at tissues. Cytology is cells, individual cells. Histology is tissues. Circle those two and put a star beside it to remember that what cytology is and what histology is. That's just a hint. Now, in physiology, instead of looking at macroscopic physiology or microscopic physiology, we look at the organ systems and what they do for us. For example, the heart. I mentioned the heart already. How does the heart, what makes the heart contract? Our heart will beat every 7/10 of a second. And it will do that for 70, 80, 90, 100 years. nonstop. What enables the heart to fit in this elegant little process? Every 7/10 of a second, it pumps blood. Half the blood that's pumped is going to the lungs, the other half is going to the body. It has to reload itself and do it again. You know, how does that work? You know, what makes that work? Below the heart on an illustration there is a kidney. Kidneys filter our blood. Our entire blood supply is filtered 60 times a day. And we go from the outside edge of the kidney to the inside edge of the kidney. How do we get our kidney to filter? You know, what is the physiology behind it? Or the mechanism of swallowing? Mechanism of swallowing. The black and white image on the right-hand side is someone swallowing. What are the physiological responses there? Well, the food that's being swallowed goes into our esophagus. The esophagus is, you can see where it goes in, right? There it goes. The esophagus is a tube in the middle of the throat. The airway is right in front of it. The airway is that lighter gray structure in front of the, I don't know if you can see the arrow or not, but the airway is the trachea right in front of that. For us to swallow effectively, the airway has to close and the esophagus has to open. As soon as we're done swallowing, then our esophagus closes and our airway opens back up. You know, what controls that mechanism? How do we get that to work? You know, well, a lot of this is controlled through our nervous system, because we are electrical. We have a charge in our cell. Every cell in our body has a charge on it. Muscle cells are charged at minus 90 millivolts. Nerve cells are charged at minus 70 millivolts. All the other cells are somewhere in between. We depend on electrical currents to get things done. We stimulate our muscle cells to contract electrically. We send signals to our brain and to down our nerves to other parts of the body electrically. We move blood through our body. We move foods through our body. And this is all, you know, we then process the food to get the chemicals out of it that we need. So we depend on physiology allows us the ability to process food, manipulate our environment, do things. So when we look at A and P, we have to understand both the structure and the function. And they're both equally important. Things work in our bodies the way they do because of how they're structured. The eyeball, for example, fascinating little structure in our head. The ability to take light rays and convert those light rays into electrical signals that we can then process in our brain as images is amazing. And yet we do it all the time. When we do look at anatomy and physiology, we have to understand terminology. We have to understand what, you know, when we're talking about the structure of the heart. If we're talking about the structure of the heart, we have to know which side of the heart we're talking about and what that side is doing. Terminology deals with both the anatomy and the physiology here. We have to be able to look at structure and manipulate it, to listen to it, to palpate it. Yeah. You listen to a heartbeat. You take a pulse. You place your fingers on the radial artery right behind your thumb, and you feel this bouncing sensation there. That's the pulse. That is the artery wall snapping back into place. We listen to the heart. We can hear the heartbeat. We can hear the individual, and if we get good enough, we can hear the individual valves in the heart opening and closing, and we know which one opens and closes first, and we can hear problems. You can observe a patient You can look at your patient and, say, well, you've experienced a rather drastic weight loss or rather drastic weight gain. You look like you also look like you might be having a problem getting enough oxygen. The nail beds, forget, well, you look pale, forget that comment. That's just, doesn't work on everybody's because of everybody's pigmentation. But the nail beds give it everything, always give it away. Our nail beds, regardless of skin color, are always pink. And if those nail beds start turning blue, it indicates a condition known as cyanosis. Cyan for blue, it means because our oxygen gets darker when our blood gets darker when it has less oxygen in it. It's very bright red when it's full of oxygen, but it's dark red when it has less oxygen. And in the nail beds, that darker red blood makes the nail beds look blue. The nail beds and our lips give it away. Forget skin color. Underneath the skin, everybody's exactly the same. We are identical underneath the skin. But the nail beds never change. The nail beds will always tell us. You can look at your patient and examine the nail bed and say, wow, just a little darker than I'd like to see here. Then that would lead to monitoring the blood oxygen levels. Just a little observation there. Where are the lips? Lip color doesn't change either. And they can become cyanotic too. So mucous membrane tends to be a giveaway for us. So observation is very, very important, because a lot of times your patient's not going to want to say things to you. They're not going to want to talk to you about stuff. Somehow patients seem to think that healthcare providers can read their minds. And if they didn't see something, then and you didn't say anything about it, then it wasn't happening. Because lots of people don't like to, they don't like to get examined. They don't like to have tests. So anyway, moving on. Let's go into. Okay, something else that we'll say now, and you'll see this as we go along in both AP1 and 2, is that the structure and function of our bodies fits together perfectly. The function of an organ is reflected by its structure. Why do we have a 4-chamber heart? Well, because we have to receive blood and then pump it out. So we have to receive blood on the right side and then pump it to the lungs. We have to receive that blood from the lungs on the left side and then pump it out to the body. Why are our kidneys designed to filter our blood? Well, because otherwise we'd be dead in 2 days. So our kidneys are designed with millions of kidney tubules there that allow us to filter out waste products and then collect that into our bladder so we can pee it away. The structure fits the function. Our small intestine is a 20-foot long tube designed to absorb nutrients. It's lined with specialized cells that will absorb food and water and protein and fats. So because everything we eat and drink ends up in our blood, and then we process it. So the structure and the function are inseparable. Now our structure can sort of be summarized with this little pyramid here, and it's just I would not put a lot of time remembering the structure of the pyramid, but the top of the pyramid is the individual atoms, like an atom of oxygen or hydrogen, leading to the water, to molecules like molecules of water, leading to the structures of the cells, leading to tissues, leading to organs, then organ systems, and then leading to the whole body. And what we see is that we get more and more complex as more and more structures and systems are put together. So we can look at the individual cells, but we know that the cells are made up of even smaller structures. At the chemical level, and this summarizes everything. At the chemical level, we're going to have atoms and molecules and organelles. Organelles are little structures within the cells that function like organs. They're specialized. At the cellular level, we get the individual cell, the smallest unit of life. There is nothing smaller than a cell that's alive. And living cells only come from other living cells. So that's how it works. Life comes from life. There's no such thing as proto-life or insta-life. You can't create life in the laboratory. It doesn't work that way. Living cells only come from living cells, and the smallest unit of life is a cell. Now, if we group cells together, we have tissues. We have muscle tissues. We have cheek cells that form the tissue lining the mouth. They're all the same cell. Muscle cells are all the same. Tissue cell, cheek cells are all the same. Liver cells are all the same. Kidney cells are all the same. Once we start putting together multiple groups of tissues, then we have an organ. Like the heart, for example. I keep coming back to the heart, but the heart has muscle cells. It has connective tissue cells. It has vessels in here. It has a lining on the outside of the heart and on the inside of the heart, and they all come together to make the structure of the heart. Or the liver, or the skin, all have different types of cells to make an organ. After all, the largest organ in the body is the skin. So, then you have organ systems. You put together the heart and lungs, make the cardiovascular system. Heart and lungs and blood vessels. We breathe and move it through the blood. Then you start putting all these organ systems together. So the systems, the organ systems, like I said, the skin, there are 11 of them. We've got the integumentary system, which is the name of the skin. Skin does a lot for us. We have the skin cells, we have the sweat glands, we have the oil glands. The oil glands lubricate our skin and keep it flexible so it doesn't dry out. The sweat glands keep us cool and help us dissipate heat. The sweat also contains a bactericide that will kill bacteria, pathogenic bacteria. It is the outer covering of our body. It protects us from pathogens. The skin is essentially water resistant or waterproof. Bacteria, viruses can't get in through our skin. The only way they can get in is if there is an opening, whether it's a cut or a scratch, or like our mouth or our nose or our eyeballs. Those are all openings in our skin that pathogens can get in. A pathogen is a bacteria or a virus or a fungus that is disease causing. That's what a pathogen is. Because lots of bacteria are very helpful. Lots of funguses are very helpful. I mean, if you like mushrooms, then you like fungus. Bacteria, if you like cheeses, you like bacteria. If I can go on. Anyway, our skin protects us. It also protects the underlying tissues. And something else it does for us is our skin, when exposed to ultraviolet radiation, sunlight, makes vitamin D. Vitamin D is what we need to obtain calcium for our bones. We get a lot of our vitamin D in milk and dairy products. All that vitamin D has been added. It's been enriched with vitamin D. We get vitamin D if we take vitamins. We get vitamin D from sunlight. But we have to have vitamin D to put calcium into our bones. Our skeletal, speaking of bones, our skeletal system are the bone, the cartilage, that's the pads between the bone, and the ligaments that hold our joints together, as well as our tendons, which attach muscles to bones. You can see the skeleton there. The Skeletons provide movement because muscles alone aren't strong enough to move us. So muscles pull on our bones and get the bones to act as a lever so that we can do things. The muscles are attached to the bones. So our movement, all of our body action is based on muscles and bones together. We make all of our blood cells in the middle of our bone. Our long bones have the middle of the long bone is where all of our blood cells, red cells and white cells get made. And our bones are a great source of calcium and phosphorus, which we need lots of calcium and phosphorus too. So it's a great storage area for that. Our muscles, well, if nothing else, what muscles do is they provide body heat. 60% of the energy found in the foods that we eat is lost as heat from our skeletal muscles. So that gives us a constant temperature of 98.6 or 37 degrees Celsius. The muscles are attached to the bones. They're attached indirectly by our tendons, and the tendons pull on the bones, and that's what makes movement. We use our muscles to manipulate our environment and to move and to pump blood and to push food through our digestive tract and to restrict the flow of blood to different parts of our body. We also use it to show expression. Most of our facial muscles are involved with showing expression. Are we happy? Are we sad? Are we upset? And a lot of that, our appearance, is based on how these muscles react. We use our muscles to maintain our posture, to stand upright, to sit upright, whatever position we're going to be in. So our muscles do a lot for us. Muscles are organs too. Now, muscles are controlled through our nervous system. Now, some of our muscles are under voluntary control through the nervous system. Muscles like our arms and our legs, when we're doing something, when we're manipulating our environment. Others we don't think about. The muscles around our digestive system, for example, squeezing food. Whatever we ate for breakfast is being squeezed through our digestive tract right now. It's like a 25-foot long tract from mouth to the anus. We don't have to think about moving that food as we process it. The nervous system controls that for us. The nervous system is our control system. It's one of two control systems in our bodies. This is the rapid control system. It triggers us to do things. We turn our head when we hear a sound or see a bright light. We process information. We read signs. We see our environment. We do things. We form words and we communicate. We can sense touch and pressure and pain and temperature, and we can detect odors and flavors. We can process different shades of color and structures, and we can determine what something means by its shape or color or by the words. And what do the words mean? The nervous system operates at a speed of about 300 miles per hour. And since the longest nerve in our body is only about 3 feet, 300 miles an hour appears to us as more than instantaneous. In the brain, the neurons, the nerve cells in our brains are only about, a millionth of an inch long. So we're processing pretty fast. I mean, it's measurable, but to us, it appears instantaneous. Okay. Cardiovascular system, I've mentioned that already several times. Heart and blood vessels. The heart pumps blood. There's movement again of a muscle causing something to move. The blood vessels move the blood around. The blood vessels are surrounded by muscles also because we can control where that blood goes. We're actually a couple units short of a full load in our blood. We don't have enough to fill up every vessel all the time. So we move blood around where we need it. On a hot day, we'll send lots of blood to the skin. to get rid of body heat. On a cold day, we will restrict that flow to the skin so we don't lose so much heat. Simply, again, it gets back to the muscles surrounding our blood vessels. Now we get to the other control system. This is the endocrine system. This deals with our hormones. We have a series of glands throughout our body. Pineal gland, pituitary gland, the thyroid gland. Some of these you've probably heard of. Adrenal glands, the pancreas, the ovaries and testes. They all secrete what we call chemical messengers known as hormones, and they will control our body's activities. They're slower. They work at a much slower pace. For example, you put your hand down on something hot, you yank it back right away. That's the nervous system at work. You eat a donut or an apple or a sandwich, and your blood sugar levels start rising because there's plenty of sugar in a donut. There's also a certain amount of sugar in an apple. So your blood sugar starts going up. Your body senses that. Nervous system at work. It signals the pancreas, an organ in your abdomen, to release insulin. You've all heard of insulin, I'm sure. The insulin acts on the cells of our bodies. Insulin's a hormone. It comes in contact with every cell in the body and tells those cells to allow sugar to enter in. And so we lower our blood sugar levels by allowing that sugar that's in our food. You eat something, we have the sugar in our digestive system. It goes into our blood. So everything we eat and drink goes into our blood. And now we got to get it into the cells and get it out of the blood. So to do that, we release insulin, which allows the cells to open up and let the sugar come in. And once we've reached, a satisfactory level, then we stop letting the sugar come in. And the rest of the sugar that didn't come in goes to our liver and gets stored there. That takes about a half an hour, 30 minutes for that to happen. So it's not fast, but it's longer lasting. Now that's nothing compared to what the ovaries and testes do. Estrogen produced in the ovary starts forming in the developing female somewhere around 11 or 12 years old at the start of puberty. And that estrogen, the female sex hormone, will be produced for the next 40 or 50 years. And that will control ovulation. It will control menstruation, having a period every month. It will control the production of an egg every month to ovulate. All of this will occur for about 40 or 50 years as the female is in her fertile time frame. Fertility period of about, from the time onset of puberty to the onset of menopause, however many years that is. It's when the female's fertile, thanks to the presence of estrogen. In males, when they hit puberty, they will start producing testosterone in the testes. That will stimulate, again, the production of sperm cells. And of course, as in the female, it will produce the secondary sex characteristics that develop. But testosterone will be produced for the next 60 or 70 or 80 or 90 years. Males will produce testosterone until the day they die. And this will, so this is a very long duration of thing. So endocrine system is not quick, but it has long-lasting effects. It is probably much more, it's as specific in its own way as the nervous system is. But it affects our growth, it affects our ability to reproduce, not just producing sex cells, but also repair and maintenance of skin and bone and structures like that. It encourages our muscle cells to grow and enlarge. We don't grow new muscle cells, but the ones we have, we can make bigger if we exercise and eat a lot of protein. So now what about the lymphatic system? Let's move on. Lymphatic system. Lymphatic system is a parallel circulatory system. It consists of vessels that run side by side with all the arteries and veins and capillaries in our bodies. See, our blood vessels themselves are leaky. They're not a sealed tube like we imagine. They've got lots of little openings in there. And the plasma, the fluid portion of our blood, the salt water that our red cells and white cells float in, leaks out. It's constantly leaking out. When it leaks out, it surrounds the outside of all of our cells. We call it interstitial fluid, meaning interstitial means around the out, around and between, but not in. Now that interstitial fluid soaks the outside of all the cells, but we want it back. So the lymphatic vessels, which are running right beside the blood vessels, will suck up all this interstitial fluid, which was plasma. Plasma, the interstitial fluid, now it's being sucked up into the lymphatic vessels. We call it lymph. And the lymph gets run through the lymph nodes, and you probably experienced your lymph nodes when you have an infection, and your physician or a healthcare provider says, "Oh, your glands are swollen." They're palpating in your neck. Your glands are swollen. Well, yeah, because your lymph nodes are swelling up to fight infection. That's where our white blood cells hang out. They tend to want to kill things there. They want to kill pathogens. So they hang out in the lymph nodes looking for things to kill. So our lymphatic system returns our fluids back to the blood. The plasma becomes interstitial fluid, becomes lymphatic fluid, which becomes plasma again. We run it through the lymph nodes to filter it and look for things that are causing trouble. And then we return it cleansed to the blood. Respiratory system, the airway, the lungs, the bronchi, the mouth, the nasal cavity. We suck air in, we blow air out, we gain carbon dioxide, we gain oxygen, and we get rid of carbon dioxide. Digestive system, I've mentioned this already. Digestive system is the mouth to the anus. The oral cavity, the esophagus, the stomach, the small and large intestine, the rectum, and the anus. We absorb nutrients and water in the small intestine, run it to the liver for processing the cleaned up, then send it back into the blood, and then from there it's distributed to the body. And anything that we can't process, we get rid of. Release it through the large intestine, through the anus, as fecal matter. The urinary system works in conjunction with the digestive system. We release fluids. What we drink, whatever fluid we drink, a portion of it's going to be retained, a portion of it's going to be excreted through the urinary system. We take out the ammonia-based wastes. When we break down proteins, we release ammonia, we get rid of those. We regulate our fluid levels through our kidneys. We either pee a lot or we don't pee very much at all. We regulate our salt levels and our acid and base levels in here. Now, this next slide shows us, let me see, I must have missed that earlier. Okay, so never mind. Sorry. Okay, this next slide shows you what can happen when you abuse the digestive system. It also shows you the benefit of X-ray. Now, for some reason, some individual decided to swallow 87 nails. Now, what you see here is those 87 nails are forming a perfect outline of the shape of the stomach. The stomach has sort of a J shape, and there it is. Now, these are big nails too. Now, X-rays work as X-rays, using an X-ray, and we probably all had X-rays, is one of those non-invasive processes that we can use to take a look at the internal structures of the body. We don't, obviously, it's probably some work here in this patient to get those nails out, but an X-ray lets you see what's going on inside, at least as far as bones or objects that will that block the movement of the X-ray. Metal nails do that. Metal nails show up very nicely in X-ray. Bones, you can see you can see the spinal column running up and down. You can see the hip bones on either side near the base there, and you can see a dark shadow running across the middle of the image, and that is the large intestine. Now, the problem with X-ray is it doesn't show up. It does not show soft tissue very well, meaning you don't see many of the internal organs. You can just see that you can see a couple of the ribs at the very top of the image. The only reason you can see the large intestine here is either it has probably had air put into it, so we can identify. As you can see, some of those nails have moved down to the base of the digestive system. So, as far as exploring the internal structures of a person, X-ray is not it. Looking for solid objects or looking at fractures in bone, X-ray is the champ. X-ray is ideal for that. It's one of many ways we have for a non-invasive examination. Because we don't want, surgery is always going to cause trauma to the body. And we can avoid a non-invasive approach to determine what's wrong, and that's better. Sometimes you can't avoid surgery. Sometimes surgery is the only thing you can do. Okay. Other structures, male and female reproductive systems. The male system has the penis, the prostate gland, the testes, the scrotum, and the vas efferens. Their purpose is to produce sperm cells and semen and deliver it to the female reproductive system. The male sex hormones are also going to contribute to the structure of the male body and to maintain muscle mass and things like that. The female reproductive system is much more complex. We have the mammary glands, the ovaries, uterine tubes, uterus and the vagina. The ovaries bring an egg to maturity every month and release it. The fallopian tube, uterine tube, is the egg moves into the uterine tube. If it gets fertilized in there, and then that brings it down to the uterus, where it will, if it implants in the uterine wall and grows, it will grow. We have a baby human growing there. The ovaries also produce the sex hormones, produce estrogen and progesterone. The mammary glands produce milk. Okay, here's another one of these pyramids. Human life functions. We start out at the top. This one's going backwards now. This is going the other way. The organism down to the chemicals. But instead of listing what they do, all these organisms, the chemicals, let's take a look at, to maintain life, we have to meet certain requirements. It isn't just enough that we know that we start out with a molecule or an atom and go up to a more complex organism. We have to understand what has to happen for life to be maintained. First of all, organization. We know we're organized from the chemicals to the organisms. That's we already got that understood. We start out with very, even the smallest atoms have their role in our body to put together the chemicals, the molecules that we need. We also have to maintain boundaries. We have to keep the cells separate. Each cell has its own membrane around it. Plasma membrane keeps them from being exposed to each other. They can share information. One cell can produce a protein that another cell needs. That's great, but they're not going to have one big giant cell. The skin protects us from the outside. We can't get through the barrier of the skin. without some sort of, intervention. So we're protected from the outside of our environment by our skin, and internally we have membranes around the cell. We have structures called capsules around most of our organs. Now, metabolic activity. Metabolism is all of the chemical reactions taking place in our body at any given time. Breaking down food, building up proteins. Catabolism. This is what we do when we eat something and we release the energy. When you look at a food item and it says, for example, I've got a cereal bar here that says it's 130 calories. So that means there's 130 calories of energy available from that bar. How am I going to get that energy? Well, by using catabolism, the cells will break down the food sources in that food bar, in that cereal bar, to release the stored energy. Anabolism is the building up of large molecules from small ones. So the contents of that food bar, if there's protein present, that protein can be used to make other larger proteins. We break it down we break the bar down to break its proteins down to their individual components, and then use those components to build up into larger molecules. Catabolic activity and anabolic activity is what metabolism is all about. Let's see. This is a good slide to mark for metabolism, catabolism, and anabolism. Anabolic reactions build things up. They use the energy that they get from catabolism. We eat something, we break down the energy, break down the food, we release the energy, and we use that energy to build things up again. So we are also responsive. We respond to stimulus. We respond to odors. We respond to temperature. We cut ourselves. We react to it. It hurts. We yank our hand back. We respond to noises and sounds. We hear words. We understand. We comprehend the words. We see things. We have to be responsive to a stimulus. And of course, we have to move. We have to pump blood. We have to move air in and out of our lungs. We have to expel fecal matter. We have to expel urine. We have to manipulate our environment. So all these things have to function for us we have to have this kind of movement. We develop, we grow, we change in stature from when we are a one-celled organism for about 36 hours after conception. We're one cell, and then we start growing really fast. By the time we implant in the wall of the uterus, we're about 160 cells, and that's only been at about 4 or 5 days. So we grow very rapidly. And we continue to grow up until we reach adulthood, and then we maintain. Growth can still occur. Our bones grow, our bones can enlarge, our muscles can enlarge. Even though they're not going to grow we're not going to grow any new ones. We still have growth. Reproduction. Cells are always replacing worn out cells, except muscles and nerves. We are always repairing ourselves. We lay down a whole new skeleton every 10 years. And we're always replacing our skin. So we also produce eggs and sperm, at least during our fertile times. So, and okay, this is a really good place to stop. So we can talk about requirements for life starting on Monday. So move down to this. Anybody have any questions on anything? Okay. Also, we'll pick up again on Monday, and I'll have this video posted in YouTube later today. And lab on Monday will be the first unit, the section on the microscope and on the tissues. So go ahead and have that PDF printed out. So unless anybody has anything else, I'm going to get us out of here, and I'll see you all later on.